Once again, welcome to our introduction to moral injury. We'd like to go ahead and thank our sponsors right now. My name is Domingo Rodriguez, and I'll tell you more about myself in a minute, but I'll go ahead and introduce Miss Charlene Johns with Stop One. Charlene?
Hi, everyone. I'm Charlene Johns, the Program Director for Stop One Suicide at the Dallas Veteran Resource Center. Of course, we're doing all virtually currently. Thanks for joining us. Our website, stop1.info, it's in the chat. And there's lots of resources. Several of our classes that we have done during this time period are recorded and accessible, as well as suicide prevention downloads. There's a lot of downloads specifically related to COVID-19. How to talk to loved ones who are feeling anxious, how to talk to kids. That information is readily available and accessible, as well as the complete listing of all the offerings and teachings that we can provide for your group or organization. So even if you want to do like a virtual happy hour with your friends so they can get this information on suicide prevention. This is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and we look forward to seeing what Domingo has in store for us today. And now I'll do a warm handoff to Brittany.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brittany Giles. I am one of the business development representatives with Garland Behavioral Hospital. We are the CE provider for this series, and I'm so glad that you all could join us today. So as Domingo briefly touched on, at the end of this session, these CEs are not going to be on demand, unfortunately. So at the end of this session, as we're wrapping things up, I will forward a link in the group chat, and you click that link, you fill out the evaluation form all the way through to submit, and then that will automatically generate updates for me, and then I will email you back a certificate of completion. I do need your license number, at least the last 4 of your SOCH, in order to claim that. And then if there are any technical issues, my email is over there on the side and I can give you an alternative form. But we are a 24-hour accessible inpatient and outpatient behavioral health hospital located in Garland. We are now in the new VA center in Garland. Unfortunately, we do not have a designated veteran unit or program, but we do offer access. We're a network with TRICARE, and that goes for just anybody that we can support within the community. Do not hesitate to reach out to us. We have professionals 24/7 there to assist. Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, and my name is Chris Bunkoff. I'm the Director of Programs and Services here at the Life Message Veterans Resource and Outreach Center, and really has been an honor for us to partner with Stop One and MVPN and Garland Behavioral in order to facilitate awareness for veterans and first responders as it relates to mental health and especially suicide prevention. So Brittany, thank you for all your hard work putting this together. You've done such a great job. You guys are going to really enjoy Domingo today. I've sat through several of his classes in person and now online, but just really great information. I would encourage you to take notes and just really take this to heart. For those of you that come across veterans or have the opportunity to come across veterans and their families, we as an organization primarily serving the east side of the Dallas Metroplex, but we are a no borders agency, which means we will help a veteran from anywhere around the Metroplex in the DFW area. We provide all kinds of programs and services and can connect them directly to other veteran service organizations and or private practice providers, depending on what their needs are. We are not only no borders, but we also cater to all branches of service and all military. It's not specific to any era. So pretty much if you're a veteran or a veteran family or even an LEO, if you've got something that we can help you with, that is what we are here to do. So I'm just really excited. Domingo, we've hit 3 pages of people on our Zoom, which is awesome. So I'm just really excited that you guys are taking time out of your schedules to come and learn more about how, suicide prevention and with veterans especially is so important to get this information, and hopefully you'll get some great value out of today. So with that, I'm going to kick it back over to Domingo.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for those introductions, and thank you for that introduction there, Chris. I appreciate that. My name is Domingo Rodriguez. I'm the Military Veteran Peer Network Peer Service Coordinator for Dallas County. And yes, that does fit on a card, barely. But what we do is we talk to veterans, spouses, dependents. I'm glad you guys like that. We talk to veterans, spouses, dependents. We find out what their issues are, go down to that root cause, and then we find resources to help them solve their own problems. We don't do it for them, but we work really hard to stand beside them and help them out as much as possible. We are a program of the Texas Veterans Commission. We are called the Veterans Mental Health Department. And if you go to milvetpeer.net, you can find out a whole lot more about us and find out where we're at, where we're located. We also provide mentorship training for the local veteran treatment courts, and we also go into the jails and talk to our justice-involved veterans. So it's all kinds of different things. And the last thing that we do is we provide training, and we're taught different aspects of a whole wide myriad of things. But we not only do we do the military cultural competency training, we do the military informed care training, which if you want to find out more about that and find out how to get your organization military informed care stamped through Texas Veterans Commission, please let me know. Our last training of this month is going to be a CALM, which is a counseling on access to lethal means, that will be done by a Texas Veterans Commission justice involved person named Erin McGann. She's awesome. I'll go ahead and help out there too. So it'll make it even more super awesome. And we'll go ahead and get started now. So let me do this. I completely forgot what I'm doing. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows this is a one-on-one basic class introducing the concept of moral injury. This can be used as an awareness class for the SMVF and community partners. SMVF is the Service Member Veteran Family Community. It's a term that we use here in Texas to describe anyone who was in uniform, is a veteran, or a family member of a veteran, or even a friend of a veteran. They also include the Texas Military Forces, which includes the National Guard and the State Guard. While moral injury is unilaterally considered in large part to have a large spiritual and even religious aspect to it, this class is intended to project the concepts of moral injury and the treatment thereof in a community public health-based aspect. And once again, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat or raise the hand or something. We can try to take care of that, and we'll go ahead and keep rolling along. So why me? Who am I? Why am I up here talking about this and going through this? So as I said, I'm the MVP and Peer Service Coordinator for Dallas County. Believe it or not, that was me a long time ago. That was a galaxy far, far away, So I am a 20-year Navy veteran. I spent 20 years, 26 days, 10 hours, and 5 minutes in the Navy, active duty and service capacity, and I still feel like I am part of that family as a veteran myself. I joined as a young pup in 1991. I retired as a Petty Officer First Class in 2011. I joined MVPN as a volunteer in 2013. I got hired as an MVPN assistant coordinator in February of 2016, and I became an MVPN coordinator in September of 2019. somewhere along the way, I became the grumpy old guy that you see before you today. So that guy. So that's who I am. But why am I here? Why are we talking about these different things? Well, there's a bunch of things that we talk about and we go through, and a lot of different issues that we have as mental health professionals who go through and trying to help our veterans, that we're trying to find out what their stories are. And it seems as if everybody has a story. So most of us know what PTSD is, right? If you do, please do the thumbs up. So I do have some, okay, for the most part. Now, have you ever heard of the term or know what the term moral injury is? How many people here know what moral injury is? Thumbs up. So yes, there are some who know and some who don't. Moral injury is not a designated diagnosis, but what is it? What does it come through? Moral injury, and this is a brand new slide just added a couple of days ago. It is current as of 2019, April 2019. Essentially, the definitions of moral injury aren't considered a set diagnosis. The original definition, which was based upon the Vietnam era veterans, focused on the failures of leaders. It was the type of injury that required three circumstances to be present: a belief of what's right, a belief in the breakdown of something that's right, by someone who holds a legitimate authority in a high-stakes situation, right? A later definition was made with the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. So it is constantly evolving and constantly moving. Which is focused on the moral failures of the individual. This type of injury says that the individual has to experience an injurious event by perpetrating failure to prevent or bearing witness to or learning about the acts that transgress deeply held moral beliefs and expectations, and that the moral ethical violation resulted in a lasting psychological, biological, spiritual, behavioral, or social impact, right? As this definition makes clear, it is important to separate experiencing a potential moral injury event from developing into moral injury. Same thing happens with PTSD, but what's the difference? Truly, what the difference? What happens is that while we have the set definition for PTSD, and while we have a set criteria for treating PTSD, there isn't one for moral injury yet. They are working on it, and right now it's almost a rush to the printer to see who can come up with the best ideas. There, in the beginning, it was a very high spiritual and religious aspect to it, and there are still those who go along that set lines. As I said, we're not going to head that way with this class. This is just a 101 class. We're going to go through and just talk about some of the things that we see and how we can deal with those. Now, let me tell you this. In 1997, I was part of a team that was flying back and forth doing several things. I was a loadmaster instructor with a Navy C-130 outfit, and we went into a place on the west coast of Africa, and we landed and had to. I thought it was just a normal mission, normal job going through, and when we landed, the USDAO, the Defense Attaché officer, came on board and said, "Hey, I need as many seats as you can give me. You know what's going on. We don't know what's going on. We need as many seats as possible to get rid of all these people and get them out." And over by the fences was just thousands of people milling about, all just kind of hanging out by these fences and going through. And so, typical arrogance, I'm like, "Look, let me know what's going on. I'll get you what you need, sir. Let me know. And essentially, what ended up happening was, at some point, he looked at me and said, "Look, you don't understand. We need to get as many people out of here as quickly as possible, as much as can go. Because if they don't, they're probably going to die. Okay. At that point, that's a lot to throw on someone who, at that point, who hasn't even hit 30 yet, right? So I'm sitting there going, oh, what do I do here? I said, give me a second. My aircraft could hold 92 people just using my seats. So in thinking about it and going through it, I decided, and in talking with the aircraft commander and everyone else, we decided that what we would do is just lift up everything, and we cleared the deck, and we had them come in, had all these people come in, and they sat behind each other, just kind of right across from each other. We put straps across, and that was their seatbelts, right? And so, extenuating circumstances, we had to get out as many people as we could. On that first aircraft, I remember this specifically because I was like, oh, how is this possible? I know that they had more than that in Vietnam that they got out, but that first aircraft, we had 247 people that we got out of there that first run. We flew less than an hour away, dropped them off in an airport, came back, and just kept going back and forth. And the only times that we didn't make the immediate flight back was when we had to take on fuel. 18 hours later, and we weren't the only aircraft doing this. There were all kinds of other aircraft out there doing this, doing all kinds of stuff. 18 hours later, we finally get back to where we were dropping them off. And the ops officer comes up and says, hey, you guys are done, shut down for the day. And we're going, no, we looked at each other as a crew, and we decided, well, we could push it to 24 hours, and then we'll take 36 on the backside, for rest and kind of do this. And what happened was the ops officer looked at us and said, no, you cannot, you don't understand. No one's going back. You're done. And so I don't know how many flights we did, but if you kind of add that up, took us about 30 minutes, back and forth each time, 18 hours. We did a lot of flights, and at least 250 people per flight. That was a lot of people we got out, but there was a lot more left when we left that last time. And specifically, I remember a family that we left last time. And I do remember all of these families trying to get their kids on board without the parents just saying, take the kids. And we're like, no, we'll be back, because there wasn't shooting, there wasn't firing, there wasn't, mortars landing on the airfield. There wasn't any, it was just, we had to get them out of there. And so we said, okay, we would. And we thought that we would just keep doing this. And then all of a sudden, they yanked this mission away from us. And we had this sense that, something was missing. For years, I had to deal with the thought of that we left so many people behind. And the issue was that I didn't get to complete my mission. My mission was to get these people out, and I didn't complete that mission. Now, is that my fault? First of all, would you call that a prime setting for PTSD? Some people would. Some people would say that it's a traumatic, experience, that that there are things going through. And I would venture to say that the number one mitigating factor that was missing was fear. I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared at all for any type of anything else that was going on. But I felt like we had violated a trust. We were entrusting with doing this mission. We had told people that we would get them out of there. We had promised through the instruments of our government, but it was us that showed up and were doing this to get them out, and we weren't able to do it. So for a long time, I had to deal with that, and it was not a highlight of my career. And if you paid attention, I got in 1991, and this was 1997. So only 6 years into my career, here I was with this huge blow. And there was other things that had happened besides that. That was one of the most impactful things that stuck in my mind. and it sat so heavy on my heart. And I stayed with it. It actually stuck with me so much that it made me continue to push hard on completing the mission. If they needed stuff done, they sent me, because they knew that if I couldn't do it, it couldn't be done. That I would actually put us at risk just to get it done. And so, you know, that became an overwhelming drive for me, was to complete the mission. And I think a lot of it had to do with that. Here we are, fast forward 2010. I'm in Bahrain. I'm walking down to the Desert Dome to go get my ration of beer. You know, you get 2 beers, right? You can go down to the Desert Dome and drink your beer there. And while I'm walking along, I see Marine security over here, two Marine security guys over here, 2 Navy security over here, and they're all walking down. I'm dressed in actual civilian clothes, walking down the way, and there's these big potted plants that are huge, about as tall as a person, and they're in front of the buildings. They're to prevent any truck bombs from coming in and you know, hurting the buildings or hurting us that are inside the buildings while we're doing that, so that they can't get so close and it deflects the blast, right? So we're kind of just walking along. I see these, the only thing I can call them is, you know, foreign workers, and we're actually the foreigners in their land. But I see them walking this way, and there's 3 of them walking. And as I'm talking to my friend, I all of a sudden see one stop. And it's kind of comical, because I see him stop and I see the other 2 like kind of pancake into him behind, because they were all walking in line. And all of a sudden, as I look over, just kind of like, what? I see this man looking at me, and he just starts babbling. And he starts talking in this language that I can't understand, and I don't know what's going on. Of course, Navy security and Marine security are both now tuned in to, hey, something's going on here. And he starts like half walking, half running toward me. And as he gets closer to me, I'm kind of thinking, okay, what do I do? And I see my buddy is getting closer to the potted plants, right? He's going away from me, going, see ya. And so I'm standing there going, now what should I do? And as I'm standing there, the only thing I could think of was, because he was almost coming at me like zombie, just kind of arms out like this, coming towards me. And the only thing I could think of was to put my arms out. And as I did, I'm stopping him from touching me. You know, my hands are on his chest, and he's kind of trying to reach me. And his friends behind him are all trying to speak at the same time. He's still speaking incoherently. Navy securities bear down on us now. Marine Corps securities bear down on us now. And the only thing I'm thinking of is, oh my God, I'm about to die, because he's going to do something stupid, right? Going to get caught in a crossfire. And his friends finally get through to us. They were like, no, he's friend, you know, he's trying to talk to, and they finally tell us that this man wanted to thank me, because apparently, somehow, more than 12 years later, he recognized me as one of the guys who got his family out. And here he is, literally 1,000 miles away on a different continent, talking to me, telling me, trying to tell me about his family and his wife and his kids, and how they're happy that they got out of that, and that, you know, I saved them, and, you know, we got them out, and everything else. And for years, I had been dealing with the fact that I left thousands behind. And here in front of me was one man who was letting me know that they got out, that what we did mattered, that what we did actually mattered. So that helped me considerably realize that what I had experienced back then, I was holding on to, and I still am, as you can tell, I still am. But it doesn't hurt as much anymore. Now it's more like, oh, thank God I was able to do something, you know, that something came out of this. And I'll tell you right now, I probably it isn't it isn't something I brag about, but if that man was standing next to me today, I still probably wouldn't be able to recognize him. I still probably wouldn't know who he was. But he recognized me. So that meant that what we did was important enough that he was able to get something out of that and recognize it, right? So I ask you, could that be more injury? Could that have been more injury? You saw what the definition and what the criteria was. So, okay. If somebody's unmuted, if you could please mute yourselves. And thank you for those who were speaking in the chat. It was a very poignant time. But what is more injury? Like psychological trauma.
By one.
Hold on.
So that way, like, if it is a matter of like, yeah, you for sure discharging, then it's like, okay, well, can he leave by 3? So then we could just
have everyone mute
versus potentially having to go get him and come back, because he would have to come with me. Like, I'm not about to drive all the way to my mom.
I can always walk outside.
Hey, Michaela.
I got it. Okay. So like I said, like psychological trauma, more injury is an overall term that is used to describe an extreme event. I'm not going to read directly from the slide. So I've already got my own stuff, set up for this. So, and also to let you know that I always put the source down in the bottom. So if you'd like to look this up yourself or find out where I got this information from, you can always find out where the source is. Thankfully, the VA has been very adamant about trying to get this not just recognized as an actual diagnosis, but to find modalities to treat. So more injury is a term that is often used to describe an extreme event in life that includes the harmful aftermath as a result of those events. In other words, the event is considered injurious if they transgress deeply held moral beliefs or expectations. This means that it shatters moral and ethical expectations that are rooted in religious or spiritual beliefs, culture-based, organizational, or even societal groups-based rules, such as fairness, value of life, and even tribal-like beliefs, that we kind of develop with each other. When I was growing up, I was always taught you protect the weak. You don't hit girls. You don't hit kids, you don't hurt kids. All these different things that you try to protect those that you could end up harming. So there's always this group-based rules about the fairness of what's going on. So, at some point, I brought that into my beliefs in that the military taught me, because they do during boot camp teach you different things, and it's the same thing. It's culture-based or organizational-based group-based rules about fairness and about the value of life and about what your mission is, what your job should be doing. And if you've heard my military cultural competency class, your mission is your job and your job is your life. So why wouldn't the values and moral and ethical expectations of that organization not be a part of your life? I mean, you're living it 24/7. So any questions so far? I don't see any in chat. Understand that this is not a cut and dry concept. More injuries may stem from direct participation in acts of combat, such as killing or harming others, or indirect acts, such as witnessing death or dying, or failing to prevent immoral acts of others, or giving or receiving orders that are perceived as gross moral violations. The act may be carried out by an individual or group through a decision made individually or as a response to orders given by leaders. Was it our decision to not go back? Was it our decision to stop what we were doing and leave those people there? We were ordered to. They literally had to order us not to do it, not to go back. We sat there as a crew talking about it for a very long time. And that kind of helped a lot too, knowing that it wasn't just me feeling this way, that it was also my commanders and the other crew members who were with me, who were going through the same thing, who felt the exact same way I did. And they felt just as if we weren't able to complete our mission. Yes, there was a lot of empathy going on, but we were able to help each other through that process. And it wasn't someone else, it wasn't an outside group that was telling us this, it was us, ourselves, talking to it and coming up with these resolutions. So it was an outside order that did this to us. Moral injury acts. This can be the result of unintentional errors. Somebody makes a decision and that decision leads to death, injury, or even worse, dishonor of our thoughts of what our mission is, or the image of the unit, right? A lot of times, the military member is so engrossed upon their unit that part of their unit becomes a part of them, right? They are a part of their unit, so the mission of the unit becomes them, and that becomes, because you're constantly told, tip of the spear, you're the best, all these different things, just to get you through that high point. And your job in the military is to be good at your job, whether that's firing weapons or sitting at a desk doing admin work. That is your mission. That is your job. So that's kind of what we take on there. Realize that this does not have to be the direct result of the individual who has the transition to their morals, but can be the result of actions of others. So as I said, we had that going on with us. I will tell you that I was giving this class before, and afterward I was meeting with someone, and it was, this was almost a business setting. It was given to a group of people who were just military, former military and SMVF, community people. And so while we were there, and I gave this class, and other people were telling me, man, I finally understand my uncle. I finally understand my dad. Or I had one that told me he finally understood his mom. So there were a lot of tears going on, a lot of things going on. And then I had one gentleman who came up to me and said, I finally am able to understand why I left the military. And I was kind of taken aback and said, why? You left the military? And he said, yes, I wanted to retire. I wanted to be, to attain this high rank. I wanted to stay in, but I couldn't. And I couldn't see myself staying in because there was something that happened, and I never realized that was the whole reason why I got out. And he proceeded to tell me about it in front of all these people, and he's telling me about this. And what they were doing house-to-house checks in Africa. And while they were going through the houses, they were looking specifically for a, lack of a better term, a warlord, right? They call it a target. Well, anyway, they were looking for this one person who was listed as a warlord. And as they're going from house to house checking this, they happened to come upon one house, and these two girls were there, and they were there kind of just sitting off to the side, and it didn't make sense that they were there, and the gentleman that was there in the house something didn't jive, and they didn't like the way it was. So while they had two guys, and he was one of the guys watching over these people while the rest checked the house, the two girls started telling him that they wanted to leave, that they wanted these guys to take them with them. that they didn't want to be in the house anymore. And essentially, what they came to the conclusion of was that these women were being trafficked, and that they, had to, they were trying to figure out what to do. And, when, as they were coming out of the house, the house was empty. As they were coming out, they told their leadership about it. They said, hey, we can't leave these girls. They want to go with us. Their leadership brought it up to their on-site commander, who was a captain, Army captain, who had to tell them, we have to continue with our mission. We have to continue finding this guy. We can't take them with us. We have to leave them here. And because that wasn't their mission. And that also would have led to other questions and could possibly lead into an international incident. But they couldn't do that. So they said, okay, when we get back, we would, to placate these guys, they said, when we get back, we'll put in, the paperwork and everything else to try to get this to happen. Long story short, as they went through all the different houses and they went back, they put in the request to go back and get those ladies out of there. And it never went further. That wasn't their mission. That wasn't why they were there. While I'm sure several of them, or probably all up and down the chain of command, they wrestled with it. They weren't able to go back. And as he's talking to me, he begins to cry and he begins to, tell this to me. And I'm like, oh, and it's hurting me in my heart. But at the same time, all I can do is listen to it. That's all I can do at that time, and just kind of understand what he's going through, and let him know that he wasn't alone. And of course, afterward, get him to proper help, let him know where he needed to go, talking to someone. But in reality, where do you go? Where do you go with that? When you're trying to forgive, thanks, Tasha, but I really didn't feel like a good battle buddy that day. I'll tell you that much. But at the same time, where do you go when it's you that needs to forgive yourself? Where can I send you in that case? There are different things that I've seen in the past that have helped different things, but where does that happen? So, and I will tell you that this class is based upon a lot of combat. It is, you will see in here that there were a lot of examples of combat, but realize that this doesn't have to be just straight up combat. There are other things that happen, especially during training, accidents, different things that lead to some unintentional errors that can lead to more injury that people are making. Any questions? Or I forgot to say that if anyone needs to talk about this or is having an issue with this, please let me know. Send me or I would prefer that it be sent to Charlene Johns or even Chris Bunkoff. We can have someone that can call you and talk to you if this becomes troubling for you. And just please let us know. You don't have to suffer through any of this alone. We just want you to know that you are not alone. Okay, so if we're all ready, give me a thumbs up if we're all ready to move on. Everybody good? Okay. So, can't see all of you on video, but okay. Yay. Example number 1. Give you a minute to read. Okay, example number 1. Die, woman, die. HM2 Jones has just shot a woman and is now trying to help her She just killed one of his Marines, and he returned fire on her. But his job as a corpsman is to now save her life. And all he wants is for her to die. And he's angry at himself that it doesn't bother him. He tells the doc, I wanted her to die. I was so angry. It bothers me that it doesn't bother me, doc. Is that wrong? Am I evil? He continues to question his capacity for evil. Some of the main things to focus on. I don't know if you know the military or not, but if you've had the military cultural competency class, you know that E5, which is the HM2, hospital corpsman second class, he is an E5. So he is fifth up in rank. So he's been in longer. He's been in longer than a couple of years, right? He's been in long enough to be able to get there, to be and that second class, that E5 is right where leadership starts getting put on to a lot of people. Sometimes it starts a little bit earlier than that, depending on them, but for the most part, in almost all the services, that E5 is where the leadership starts getting put on to people, and they start being responsible for others as well as themselves. Well, as an HM2, he's attached to Marines. We call him a Greenside Marine. His job is to protect Marines and to keep them from dying. That is his job as a hospital corpsman. Those of you who've watched movies and that, when they yell out medic, he would be the one that would be coming up. The Marines would yell out corpsman, and he would come for that. He has 2 tours in Iraq, so this isn't his first rodeo. He's a 30-year-old corpsman, which is means that he probably joined the military a little bit later, or he's been in a little bit longer. Especially with 2 tours in Iraq, he feels responsible for his Marines. He just shot the female, and now he's trying to save her life against his own thoughts that just want her to die, because she killed his Marine. She killed one of the people that he was responsible for. Later on, he's questioning himself on his evil side. True story, actually happened. How do you deal with that? His role is to save her now. It never says whether he actually did save her or not. But he said he wanted her to die. He was so angry. And it bothers him that it doesn't bother him. Why I'd venture to argue.
It says unmute. I know, but if that's okay.
I venture to argue that it does bother him. So is that wrong? Am I evil? He's questioning his capacity for evil. How would you deal with this? How would you talk to him about this? He's definitely having issues with forgiveness at this point, right? Some different things. Number 2. And like I said, these examples are very heavily combat based. So here we are again. Another choice that's hard to make, but isn't necessarily theirs that isn't necessarily under their control. These bullets weren't made for him. He was a staff sergeant. And once again, we're getting up a little bit higher in rank. You're actually 2 ranks higher than the last one. And so he may be in charge of anywhere between 30 to 100 to 200 people that are directly under his control. They're coming to him specifically for advice, for different things, issues that they're having, training. These are Marines that are underneath him, that he's basically watching and helping to train to become better Marines and to become, to take over his spot. 31-year-old, so he's right on track, right about that age frame, with 2 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he watches his Marine burn because he's trapped in a Humvee. His corpsman, realize this, his corpsman, the person whose job is to save and protect the Marines, is telling him, yelling at him to shoot and kill the Marine to put him out of his misery. Does he shoot, or does he listen to him scream until he dies? They can't reach him. We never know what decision he made, but he questions how he can live with it either way. And yeah, it's definitely a lose all the way around. Number 3. And all of these are examples of of everything we've kind of talked about earlier about the decisions that they had to make, the transgressions of others, the transgressions of themselves, or even the inability of being able to do something that's somebody else's decision that affects you and your unit. So in essence, they had already gone through and they had cleared this village, and they had come back, and these are the words of the Corporal Chavez. In the Marine Corps, first level of responsibility is the Lance Corps, who is normally in charge of 2 other people, normally a rifle team or something else like that, kind of going through. So they normally become in charge of 2 other people, especially in their infantry. And corporal will be in charge of 4 people plus themselves, right? It's a lot of responsibility for a 25-year-old who not only has to take care of themselves, but also 4 other people who are armed and have to make that decision on when they're going to shoot. So he has 1 tour to Afghanistan already. So he's not brand new to this. They went through, found nothing, called it in. Their leadership, authority, command and authority said, no, that's not right. There's something wrong. You got to go back through. So they go back through again. And now that there's one of his Marines is killed. Can you begin to see why there would be a mistrust of authority, why there would be a mistrust of the system or of the command, or in general, everything relating to anything called authority? And like I said, these are all very combat specific. So what we were talking about earlier with moral injury and how it relates to PTSD, how does it relate? So we have factors that kind of go with both. These are different signs and symptoms that we see. We see anger, depression, anxiety, insomnia, nightmares, right? Self-medication with drugs and alcohol. I will tell you that was a huge one for a lot of us that I knew, especially some of those missions that we came back from. And we didn't realize it. We thought it was our way to, we called it our sleep aid, right? You could drink to a certain amount and then fall asleep. But if you went over a certain amount, you stayed up. So it depended on how we were utilizing it and going through. PTSD, you have the startle reflex, the memory loss, the fear, the flashbacks. The moral injury is more centered upon the sorrow, the grief, the regret, shame, alienation. In essence, PTSD, we're looking at fear-based, specifically fear-based. Thankfully, we have different modalities that are being used to treat these people now. But how do we treat a grief or even a shame-based diagnosis, in essence. It is. It's exactly like an integrity injury. And, you know, that is kind of the way it goes through. So which situations do you think would be more apt to cause a moral injury? Being forced to kill a child, killing an unarmed person, deploying to a war zone, or how about doing nothing when others are in need? And some people are like, being forced to kill a child, I would never do that. I would never go through. I actually just read an account yesterday, as a matter of fact, that a friend of mine was talking about on Facebook. He had put it on Facebook to an open group, and it's global, you know, so anyone can reach it. One of the things he was talking about was how when he first got to Iraq, he had friends back home who were sending him gifts to give out to the kids, little packets of crayons, right? That they were to pass out to the kids. And his first convoy that he went out on, the kids were there. So he started throwing, you know, he reached down in his pack and started throwing these packets of crayons out to the kids, and they started getting closer. And when they got done, one of his sergeants had to come up and tell him, don't ever do that again. Don't do that, because the enemy likes to use the kids as to slow them down. You know, the enemy likes to use these kids to slow them down, and they move as they get closer, or as they stop the convoy. That's when they would attack the convoy. Also, the fact that they could put IEDs on the kids, and so one of the things that he talked about was that, in essence, their drivers were trained. You might have to sometimes run over the kids. If they threw a child in front of a moving vehicle, that vehicle was not to stop. That's the number one thing as a driver. You do not stop, ever. You put everyone else at risk. So could it happen? Yes, it could, very easily. Any questions? Because we also have to realize that the value of life isn't just our burden to keep. It's also the burden of the enemy. And if the enemy doesn't value the life of those people, then where does that put us? Okay. So we are at 1 o'clock, essentially. Does anyone need a break? This is some heavy stuff. If you need a break, please put thumbs up. We'll see. No? Okay, then I will continue. Okay. I'll tell you what. Let's take a 5-minute break. We will be back at 2 after. Okay. So please go get some water, some coffee, use the bathroom. If you need to talk to one of us, please tell us in chat, or I'll throw my number in there and you can text me, or we could have somebody else call you. Okay, sounds good. Any questions? I'll go ahead and stay on if there's any questions. If anybody wants to talk or give a comment. There was a question about the slides. Yes, I can provide the slides. I need to get your information. So if you could let Brittany know, I can get them to her, and she can provide them to you that way. I realize they are constantly changing, because this, like I said, this is still in work. There are still people who are writing things. The first ones to get printed are the ones that are um, the ones that are trying to steer where these types of therapies would go. Right? There are some that are trying really hard to have it only be chaplains and a spiritual aspect to it, a spiritual or religious aspect to it. There are some who are trying to keep that out of it. So, any questions? Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, you know, at working here at Life Message, you know, we see veterans all the time, and being able to have just a little bit of an insight into what they may have experienced and where they're coming from as a person who's here to give help and care, because we haven't walked in their shoes, we haven't seen what they've seen, or even been in an environment where some of these things can, and you know, it's like your worst nightmare, right? Or maybe something that you might have seen in a movie or something, but when you're sitting across the desk talking to somebody or a family member that has a veteran in their home that's struggling with all this stuff and they're dealing with it on a daily basis, I just think I'm so glad for all those that have joined this workshop and are understanding when they come across a veteran or a veteran family member to get that insight. I think is so valuable to help us do a better job to serve and support them. So thank you, Domingo, for helping bring it and make it real. It's not the fluff, right? It's real. So so thank you for that.
You know, and I just want to say I appreciate people, you know, being very understanding and you know, working with me on different things. I know that I was diagnosed PTSD for a long time, and it was I kept going, no, that isn't what it is. That isn't, you know, I didn't feel like that's what it was for me. I didn't feel like that was correct for me. And you know, I would get told, well, you're not the one who went to school. You're not the one, you know, you don't have that backing, you know. But it just didn't feel right to me. And when I was introduced to this, and this concept has been around since actually the 70s, it was the second I heard it, I knew. The second I heard it, read what it was, I knew what my issues were. I knew that this was it. And it, you know, like everything else, it isn't a cure-all. It isn't like I'm going to be magically, you know, but it does help. What the way it was explained to me was that PTSD is normally treated, you know, along the lines of rate therapy. It continues to be talked about, and it's almost like a desensitization. Kind of go through and get to that person. Now I understand that they're doing different modalities. EMDR is one of them. You know, all these other different things. But for moral injury, it's something that every time you think about it, it's like re-injuring again. So, you know, how do we deal with that? And I'll talk about that in a minute here. So,
It's
dealing with your core values of who you are as a person, you know, and these circumstances make questions who you are as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And what you grew up to believe. And I think religious belief should take, you know, it does impact people's moral evaluation of themselves.
mm-hmm.
And so I hope they don't exclude that in the process.
True. True. You also have to look at the fact that, you know, not only are we looking at those aspects, but it all depends upon the societal group that you're a part of, almost to the tribal level. You know, who your family is, who your friends are, who you're constantly hanging around with. These things become they kind of lead us to where we're at, right? What's the old saying? What was it that parents would say? Birds of a feather flock together, right? You know, I mean, you become who your friends are. I don't want you hanging around that crowd because, you know, you begin to take on their moral beliefs and their ideology.
Yeah.
it kind of becomes the same thing.
Yeah. Jennifer put in the chat, she was asking, do you see moral injury in other professions such as law enforcement, medical, et cetera? And as an 8-year EMT paramedic in upstate New York, I can tell you, even as you were sharing those stories, while they were combat related, again, when you were responding to, multiple vehicle accidents or, burning fire, apartment complex on fire, and you have to choose, who you're going to save and who you're not going to save sometimes and such. It brought back some memories of some of the different things that I saw in my time of service. And so I think obvious, you can definitely see that in other professions as well. So and again, as clinicians and counselors, you guys come across, LEOs and family members and, veterans and such. And a lot of times it can cross over, which is why, we try to make these classes available and just raise awareness for, it's not just the veterans that are committing suicide, but law enforcement and first responders at astronomical rates are, higher and higher every year. Which is unfortunate, and why we're so passionate about providing this type of training. It's so important. So good question, Jennifer.
So also to add on that, kind of what Chris was talking about, and we're almost at our return. We actually are at a return time. So I'll say this and then move on. But the other aspect of it too, on that side, not just the people who are first responders, you also have CERT team, which is the community emergency response teams, right? So I worked at the North Central Texas Council of Governments for a while, working in the emergency preparedness department. And one of my jobs was to set up training for the different groups. And one of them was the CERT teams. And we would literally hire a Hollywood special effects crew to come in and, put people up and do this and that, and, put different wounds on them. And we had one shotgun wound to the head. It was like, one of our SWAT team members thought it was actually real. He's like kind of, looking at the person. It was very traumatic. It hurt some people, right? But it was training. And so we had these people that were there, and these CERT team, they're in your community. Any one of you could be a CERT team member. Anyone, I believe it's 16 and older, or it might even just be 18 and older, but they can get this training. And one of the things they do for mass casualties is mass casualty drill is they do triage. So imagine, something happened huge, like a big explosion somewhere, and fire department and everyone's overwhelmed. The hospitals, the nurses, everyone's overwhelmed. These CERT team members are trained to come in, they get these tags, and they write down and they put down who is treatable and who is too far gone. And, and so when they also do it during tornadoes. How many tornadoes do we have in this area? They go into these different places and they try to determine whose life is going to be saved and whose life isn't. And they don't get the constant training, that some of the first responders do. They get a certain amount of required training once a month, once a quarter, once, whatever. Whereas the first responders do have a lot. There is a lot to be said with the ability to be able to talk to your peers, to the people that are right there beside you going through the same thing. Go ahead, Chris, and then I'll move on.
I was just going to say that, again, for us, there was no training. We didn't talk about it. Everybody, most of my peers and everybody, there was the bar in town that most people headed off to. They looked for ways to escape. You didn't talk about it because usually you're on your way to your next call. That you barely get cleaned up and you're on your way to your next emergency. You're on your way to your next thing or your next shift. And so there was very little time to process. And so it became really tough because you didn't process through or talk to anybody because that was a sign of weakness. So you weren't going to, You weren't going to do that. You weren't going to bring up, nobody wanted to get benched or put on the desk or, brought out of the field or any of those kind of things. So you didn't talk about it. Most of my friends went off to the bar. I grew up in a strong family of faith. So I had my faith and my family and other things to kind of keep me grounded. But after years of doing it, even that was oftentimes not enough. So.
Okay, so if we're ready to move on, let's give me a thumbs up and let's go ahead and move on. Let's make sure everybody's good. Okay. So this next section, we start talking about the consequences, and you also hear some different things about what they're saying themselves. Hopefully everybody's back and we can continue on with this. Like I said, if you need to, please text Chris or what is the chat, private chat, Chris or Charlene. Let them know that something needs to happen. You need to talk to someone. So survivor's guilt. Have you ever met a veteran who had a very demanding or critical decision-making job while they were in the service, who now has issues with self-confidence? You start to wonder, what happened? This may be because the military works on the assumptions of accountability, always, right? Sometimes this can create unrealistic beliefs about themselves, and most especially about the capabilities of others. So you get out, you come over here, and you're going, hey, you didn't do what you said you were going to do. What's up with that? You kind of going through. And there are times where you're holding yourself accountable and you're saying, I'm going to do this, and you don't get it done. And you're beating yourself up going, why am I not getting this done? Why am I not getting this done? We talk about a lot of those things, especially during the military cultural competency training. But in essence, this is why. This is why. From the very beginning of boot camp, you are responsible for yourself, and you're going to be held accountable for your different actions, which means everyone around you is being held accountable for their separate actions. So when something happens and you get this belief that they are not being held accountable, or that you yourself are not being held accountable for something that you perceived was wrong or done wrong, that deserves some type of punishment, you bring it about yourself. Start putting that burden on yourself. Ask a combat veteran, or ask any veteran in a leadership position. Doesn't necessarily have to be combat. Anyone in a leadership position, anyone in the leadership position, and they are told that it is their sole mission to get all of their men and women home alive. And yet we know that it is a guarantee that men and women will die in war, even if we do everything right. So a lot of times it becomes hard to accept and harder to live with. So as I said, not just war, it is even during training. We have a lot of different training exercises where people die. And sometimes those leadership people hold themselves accountable to that. Us service members often take to blaming themselves rather than accepting the unpredictable. Sometimes those veterans in the leadership positions are set up from the beginning, right? What I mean is that they're told from the beginning that their sole job is to get everyone home safe and sound. This is a false mission, in that if everything is done correctly, they still might lose people. And that's in training, much less during the fog of war. This can lead to the veteran or service member blaming themselves for the events that they thought they should have been in control of. When I was still in, actually, I was actually attached to a aircraft unit over here at JRB in Fort Worth, and we had a person who was sleeping under the bridge, under a bridge. He would come on base, and we're like, what? Homeless? What is he doing on base? How did he get on board the base? Come to find out, he was actually a high-ranking official, high-ranking military member, who was a veteran who had gotten out. Long story short, when I was talking to him, in essence, he didn't feel that he deserved to have a house because he led people in combat and they died as a result of some of his orders. And so he didn't feel that he deserved to actually be able to live a normal life, to be able to have a family. He didn't have the right, using his words, he didn't have the right to be loved by his family when his men that were dependent upon him to make the right decision were no longer able to have the same thing. So thankfully, we were able to get him some help. And that was even while I was in. So it isn't just the enlisted. It isn't just, a certain population. It's the full spectrum of the military that can fall under this. So realize that not only combat vets feel this way about their comrades in arms, there is sometimes a closeness that is from so much time spent in training, working and waiting, especially the waiting. Now imagine that men and women that you bonded with, that man or woman that you bonded with is injured or even killed when under your watch. You feel a sense of responsibility for them not coming home. That loss can be devastating because it's not just a friend, it's someone who's even closer than most of your family members and is perceived as a failure on your mission. Now, remember what I said earlier, your unit mission was your job and your job was your life. And the whole reason for that was because no matter what your job was, if they called you at 4 a.m. or 7 a.m. and you just got off a mid-watch, which is a midnight watch, 4-hour stint, you went in. So it didn't matter while you were in, that was your job, that was your mission, that was your life. So any questions? Okay. How many times have we heard these terms ourselves? I'm a monster. If my family really knew me, they wouldn't love me. Or some version of this, such as, if you really knew me, you wouldn't like me that much, right? If you knew what I was like back then, you wouldn't like me. What about the inability to trust your own decisions? I can't let myself feel anything because if I do, I can't control it. No one understands me. Or how about the emotional numbing? I call it robot voice. Have you ever heard someone tell their story and they tell you, well, there we were on the road and an IED went off and Jensen died and we went through, and it's almost like they're telling you about this, but if they were ordering a Happy Meal at McDonald's, they probably would have shown more emotion than what they're showing then, right? So I call it robot voice. All of these different things. Just go ahead and read through these. There's a lot there to read. So, the extreme guilt, the shame, the detachment, the isolation. No one really understands me. How many times have we heard these? I know I hear them quite a bit during the peer groups that I am a part of. There's also the feeling of non-faithlessness. I'm angry with God. How can God let something like this happen? I felt that a lot, especially in Iraq. We would, in the beginning of the 2003, 2004 timeframe, flying in and out of Basra, that's what we were doing. We were taking injured people out of there. And most of the time they were foreign nationals, and most of the time they were kids. The majority of the time we're taking these kids, we're flying them out of Baghdad, all these different places around Iraq, and we're flying them to Basra. Because in Basra, take it down to the port town there's you could take them to the Comfort, big hospital ship with 1,000 beds on it. And you would take them down there to the hospital, and sometimes they're missing limbs, sometimes they're just burned. You'd have, 4 or 5, 10-year-olds that didn't have any family that were going with them, but they were burned. So we had to take them down to those different places, for different things like that. There's also the feelings of condemnation, such as I'm going to hell. I'm never going to be forgiven for what I've done. I don't deserve, love, different things like that. There's the distrust of authority on any level. Felt this a lot, especially when I was working different places here. I'm just a number. Why did I even spend 20 years doing that when there's nothing out here for me? I just want to go back. I just want to be back there. There's the no one understands me, and then of course there's the avoidance behaviors. And realize that as you talk about the moral injury events, it isn't necessarily desensitization. It's almost like it's always a rescarring, a reliving of that event that tends to rescar rather than lessen. So it's almost like you're being injured again and again and again. So I am seeing chat on here, but my phone is not picking it up. So if there's anything that's being questioned, please tell me, Chris. So one of the questions that by now that most people would ask is, how do we treat it? What kind of things we would look at for different things, for helping? Like, as I said, there is no set treatment for this. It's not even a proper diagnosis, so it's not even in the book. So how do we treat this? Well, I will tell you that some of the things that I saw, and I saw some when I was in, and I didn't realize what was going on, but I did see a couple of things that now I'm like, oh, that's perfect. For those of you who are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there's a place called Traders Village, right? It's near Grand Prairie, and once a year they have I can't remember what they call it. I think it's like tribal days or something. But they have several Indian tribes come in, Native American tribes come in, and they do their ceremonies. They perform their ceremonies. They have all the regalia on, and they go through. One of the things that I saw, I remember I was home on leave, and I had my camera with me, so I went out there to go see this, to take pictures. And I remember while I was in the stands, I saw a Marine come out, and he came out in his full uniform. And he was dancing while they were doing some dance going around in a circle, and he got out there and was dancing with the rest of the group that was there. Apparently, he was related to them. And while he goes around once by himself. The second time he goes around, different dancers that went with him the first time, because they all were just a jumbled mess, all going around in a circle in the beginning. And then at one point, they all lined up in a circle. And as he's going around, there's 2 or 3 people behind him, but they're all offering a bit of regalia off of themselves. Armbands, different things that they're handing to him. And he's accepting it for them, all while he's dancing, and he's handing it back to the person behind him. And when they finally get around to the end, they continue on with their program, what they were doing. And at some point, he comes back out, completely dressed. He still had his uniform on, because I could still see the red stripes, going down, and I could see that he was still wearing the jacket. But he had on all of the regalia that they had given him, and so he's wearing all these items that they had given him. And while he was dancing around, as he passed each person, they joined in behind him. and they all became part. It was their way of welcoming welcoming a warrior back to their tribe, a warrior who had proved himself in battle back to their tribe and become a warrior of their tribe. And I can't remember what tribe it was. I do know they were out of Oklahoma, but they had come down here for that. And I mean, to me, it was such a moving experience at that time that I was like, wow, this and that. I'm trying to get pictures. I don't even think I remembered to take some of the pictures at a certain point. But now that I look back upon that, and I'm thinking, oh my God, that is such, what a way to welcome someone back. What a way to make them back and being a part of their community, a part of their society again. Another thing that I've heard of, and I can't remember where I saw the video of it, but they had a gentleman who was in the Army welcome back to a church, and they had him stand up front. And while their church was there, they took him to the back. And while everybody else had come up for the prayer at the rail, they had him come back dressed in a civilian outfit, suit and tie and everything. And while he was standing there, everyone from the congregation came up and put a hand on him. And they all behind each other put a hand on them. And so at some point, he was connected with every single person as a part of their congregation. There are different exercises that I've seen and heard. One of the things that I heard during a peer group was a veteran who was describing these feelings of guilt and shame and how he felt like nobody else understood, and nobody except for us, because we had talked about it, right? He's like, oh, I can't believe this. And so one of our veterans was talking about looking in the mirror, looking himself straight in the eye in the mirror and telling himself, I forgive you. I forgive you for certain things, to remember things that were hurting him still, and to get himself to the point to where he could look in the mirror and say, I forgive you. Or even look himself in the mirror and say, I'm sorry. We had another group that talked about same thing, looking in the mirror and getting to the point to where you could talk about your day and say, I like that this happened today. I like how you did this today. And hopefully get to the place to where you could actually look at yourself in the mirror and say, I love you. But there's many different things. I don't. I've been talking for a long time. Has anybody else got an idea? Chris, you're unmuted. Do you have an idea?
I was just, as I was listening to the stories, the contrast for those that come home and are able to connect back to a group versus those that weren't. I think a lot about our Vietnam era veterans that, were treated so differently when they came home, and how that could all play into how they're processing this moral injury and how they see themselves based on the opinions of, what was being talked about, or all the different things that they may have experienced as Vietnam veterans coming home and stuff. So I think connection and being able to talk about it, though, whether it's your church group or another community group or something, having a place for them to feel comfortable enough to come to where they can be accepted for who they are, I think is powerful.
And I'll tell you, a lot of our different groups are, we see that a lot. And the funny thing is that we tend to have people that come into our groups, and they're looking for something, and they're talking about these feelings, and they're talking about guilt and shame, and all these different things. And then at some point, there's a breakthrough, and at some point they start talking and they start going through, and then inevitably at some point they stop coming back. It's almost like they found what they needed, and they, okay, thanks for that, appreciate it. And so kind of going through. So as I said, before, and I want to address what Natasha wrote into the chat. It's not just war. It's not just battle. There are so many different issues and things that we face now. I know someone who, I'm sorry, I read about someone who had there was some serious substance abuse issues that were going on, and one of the issues was while talking in a group, he stated, "I killed my best friend," and the facilitator of the group was like, "How? No, you didn't. How? What did you do? Did you shoot them? Do you know this?" And the questions weren't that direct, but in essence, that's what the questions kind of were asking, kind of trying to lead to what happened. In essence, this person was a tank tank driver, or actually a tank commander, in charge of a tank, right? So they sat in the turret of the tank, the driver's up front, the gunner's down below, and this person tells them where to go to and where to shoot at, right? So his best friend was also a tank commander, who had his own tank that they were going through, and an accident happened. The tank rolled over. This person, his friend, had his arm stuck underneath the tank. Couldn't get free. Thankfully, he wasn't crushed underneath the tank. It was there, but he couldn't get free. He was stuck there, and they couldn't figure out how to move the tank, because every time they tried to move it, it would start to slide a little bit and cause them pain and everything. So they were like, okay, well, they decided they would go from the other side, put chains on, and then get the tank this way. So he said, yeah, sure. So he's on this side trying to get the tank to roll. Something happened, and the tank rolled completely over and crushed his friend. And he's talking about this, and this wasn't during war. It wasn't during any type of conflict or anything. It was in training. It was just a training event that happened, and his friend ended up being crushed in training. At that point, he still, I like to say that we got him help and got through, but still to this day believes that he killed his best friend. So how do we deal with that? I will say that there has been a lot of therapy associated, but nothing has proven successful so far. So how does he gain the forgiveness that he's seeking? And the question becomes, who does he gain that forgiveness from? So here we are. This is kind of what started me. I was on the board of the Tarrant County Veterans Coalition with Dr. Rita Brock when she was here at the TCU Bright Divinity Center, and that started my journey on moral injury. And like I said, when I first heard it, it was like, oh, now I know, right? This is it. So these are the 6 questions. What causes moral injury? So in a combat situation, it isn't, like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be a combat situation. It's the result of following or issuing certain orders, or even witnessing something. Hold on. Is this helping with the audio? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So what are the symptoms? She describes the feelings of guilt, the shame, everything we talked about before. We showed the little graph. Sufferers subsequently struggle to connect and empathize with others. Sometimes they become alienated with not just societal norms, but also with the organizations and the tribal organizations that they're a part of. How is it different from PTS? I think we talked about that PTS is fear-based, and moral injury is not. I think we also talked about the treatment, and Dr. Brock pointed out that sometimes moral injury can agitate more, bringing that immediate emotional immediacy, and makes it a lot harder to address. Okay, so what is the best treatment? As I said, we haven't found one yet, right? So we've been looking, but there's so many out there that can help. It can be, one thing, or it can be a multitude of things. Sometimes the one-on-ones are a blessing. Sometimes the groups are a blessing. A chaplain or a clergyman. Sometimes helping to write. I know for myself, speaking about it helps a lot more. Being able to say different things and talk about what happened kind of gives it a good reason for happening, not just happening for no reason at all. For having to live through this and having a reason for it to have happened. That's, and that may be one of those, irreconcilable control issues. But hey, we take what we can get sometimes. Prayer, meditation, all these different things. And then I also gave the examples earlier that I knew about from different places. Does it apply only to soldiers? And no, it does not. We already talked about the first responders. We talked about some of the CERT teams. And what about the people that when in times of stress, they act against the moral code? Poverty-stricken mother who abandons her child. I know for myself, being from a Mexican family, family is everything. Family is huge with us. It's all about the family. So can you imagine if one of my cousins, was to get pregnant and then have to abandon her child? That is a serious taboo against what we believe as a family. A drug addict who commits a crime to support the habit. They may be stealing from their parents. They may be stealing from their grandparents. They may not necessarily want to, but they kind of have to. We all know that sometimes it doesn't. You're not necessarily in control of it all there. But then again, what are we really in control of? An office worker fabricates documents, for fear of losing the job, or sometimes destroys documents for fear of losing a job. So how can you help the loved one who suffers from moral injury? As always, listening is important. Dr. Brock has noticed that when people are introduced to the term, their eyes light up in recognition. They know it for themselves, or they know someone who has it. The first step in healing is identifying the problem. The second is to reach out to someone who will understand. I'm sure a lot of us completely understand that. And like I said, for myself, I knew it. The second I heard it, I knew. To me, the others didn't make sense. But when I heard this and when I thought about my situation, I was like, okay, I know exactly. Any questions? Any questions whatsoever? Any other comments? I do agree with Chris that there are, a combination of all of them are probably the best, not just the clergy, not just the peer groups, not just the one-on-one, but also, the therapy, getting them to write. I try to get people to write in journals as much as possible, trying to make sense, prayer, meditation, all these different things that can help. And we all know that. So, like I said, that we are the Military Veteran Peer Network, and this is an introductory course, right? I know we've gone in kind of in depth in some of it, but I just wanted to let you know. If there are any questions, please unmute yourself and ask. Let's talk about this. But just to let you know, remember I said earlier the milvetpeer.net, that is the MVPN, which, oops, the symbol actually should be in this corner. It's probably my face there right now, but and we are a part of the Texas Veterans Commission, even though I am attached to the local mental health authority, which in the case of Dallas is Metro Care Services. We are Metro Care Veteran Services. But if you're looking for you're in a different spot and you're looking for a peer service coordinator in your area, we do have this map on milvetpeer.net, and it's actually better because it actually has all the counties in there, and you can narrow it down to one county and see specifically who it is. This is just a screenshot, so if I was to put my cursor over the little point mark, it would tell me the name and the phone number and the email address of the peer service coordinator. So my name, email address, and all that would be there.
Very cool.
And if you're looking to reach out to me, there is my information. Are there any questions? Take it away, Brittany.
And please, if anybody does have questions for Domingo, interrupt me because that'll take priority. But as everyone can see in the chat, please open up the chat. We invite everybody that attended today to complete the evaluation form. Domingo would love to get feedback and criticism and kudos. But feel free to, just as you said, it's always evolving in content. So it's just really helpful to capture that. It is a requirement for you to obtain the CEUs for today. You will have to. So if there is an issue with that link for you, then just shoot me over an email. Do not forget the number 2 in my email address. There's 3 of us. And then I can get you a physical form over there. But again, thank you all for attending. I think incredible perspective, especially with, as somebody mentioned, September being Suicide Awareness Prevention Month. And so just incredible. Thank you, Domingo, for the insight and for the wonderful information.
Brittany, do you want to talk next week?
I just want to throw out there that this is an introductory course out here. The Texas Veterans Commission, the Veteran Mental Health Department does have a longer course that it goes more in depth, and it is given by a licensed clinician, and he's also a chaplain, I believe.
Cool.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, the series continues as we continue through the month of September. We have 2 more classes. Next week, September 22nd, you can still sign up for free and join us next week. We're going to be talking about the S-word conversations. So on suicide prevention specifically. Charlene, is there anything that you want to share about that class specifically that would be pertinent?
Well, just be sure to register and sign up and come with your questions. It is based on, we use clips from the S-word documentary, and the S-word being suicide. And then the clips that we show are generally used to kind of ignite engagement and conversations around what you can do to help. And last Friday on 9/11, we did the presentation for the Freedom Day folks, and it really illustrated to the participants the importance of engaging with the community, engaging with people, and making sure that you know the warning signs. So please visit our website. The first thing that's going to pop up is going to be a file that you can download that shows the warning signs for suicide. Those are all available and very accessible, so you don't have to feel like, oh hey, I want those. Just again, the goal of this, and I think part of what moral injury brings out is the shame associated with asking and seeking treatment. And these things, the more people engage in conversations, the more people engage the community in seeking information that's valuable and that is directly related to mental health. The more we have these kinds of conversations, the more people will get a better understanding and get appropriate help at the appropriate time and avoid the catastrophic loss of suicide. So we are here. We'll be here next week, same time, same bat place. And appreciate everybody that was here. Give Domingo a great round of applause and feedback. It's hard to be
I do
showing
have
love.
I do have to answer a couple of questions that were sent to me privately. I wasn't able to see them while we were doing the presentation, but now that we're there. So from a clinical perspective, is moral injury treated, counseled generally the same as PTSD as far as therapies and coping mechanisms? In reality, it's not necessarily treated. The VA is beginning a program that does have, that they are trying different modalities to see what they can do, but it is not an official diagnosis, so they cannot officially claim that it is moral injury. From a clinical perspective, it's not treated as that. It is generally considered PTSD, and they go do that, or they can call it something like severe depression. All these different things, unless they put it on the research side, and then they can say officially that it's moral injury. So Debbie, I also want to say, hey, thanks for what you said. I appreciate that. And a couple other of you that sent out the feeling of love. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, I did get a little emotional. It's just, it's part of it. It's part of my therapy, I guess. Okay, I think and I also wanted to say, yes, there were people that I knew that were in when we were in, and we dealt with a lot of, some of us dealt with the issues of substance abuse. I think I kind of covered that a little bit. And I think now that I am out, one of the things that I tell people is, specifically veterans, is that now you're not a civilian. You're never going to be a civilian. I say this during my military cultural competency class because of the fact that, one, it's like going backwards. We started as a civilian, we put on, we were uniformed service members, and now we're veterans. Moving forward, going into veterans, because society is never going to let us be civilians. If my face ends up on that TV screen, they're not going to say Domingo Rodriguez, Joe Smo, civilian, did this. They're going to say Domingo Rodriguez, U.S. Navy veteran, did this. Domingo Rodriguez, U.S. military veteran, did that, right? Mm-hmm. So I have to uphold myself as a military veteran, and that includes some unwritten rules, not just protecting my name, my family's name, but also those who I served with, those who wore the uniform, those who will wear the uniform, and that includes protecting my brothers and sisters still to this day. So that kind of helps me keep my clarity in what I'm doing and why I'm doing things. It has also led me to this job specifically. So I hope that helps the person who sent me the question asking about a battle who took their life. Not your fault. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for everything, and I'll stay on for a little while. So if you guys want to talk, camera's coming off, and we'll be on for a little bit. And don't forget to sign up for next week.
Great job, buddy.